Chapter 22, Disease in West Africa. Great as is the delay and difficulty placed in the way of the development of the immense natural resources of West Africa by the labor problem, there is another cause of delay to this development, greater and more terrible by far, namely the deadliness of the climate. Nothing hinders a man, Miss Kingsley, half so much as dying, a friend said to me the other day, after nearly putting his opinion to a practical test. Other parts of the world have more sensational outbreaks of death from epidemics of yellow fever and cholera, but there is no other region in the world that can match West Africa for the steady kill, kill, kill that its malaria works on the white men who come under its influence. Malaria you will hear glibly talked of, but what malaria means and consists of you will find few men ready to attempt to tell you, and these few by no means of a tale. It is very strange that this terrible form of disease has not attracted more scientific investigators, considering the enormous mortality it causes throughout the tropics and subtropics. A few years since, when the peculiar microbes of everything from measles to miracles were being isolated, several bacteriologists isolated the malarial microbe, only unfortunately they did not all isolate the same one. A resume of the various claims of these microbes is impossible here, and whether one of them was the true cause, or whether they all have an equal claim to this position, is not yet clear, for malaria, as far as I have seen or read of it, seems to be not so much one distinct form of fever as a group of fevers, a genus, not species. Many things point to this being the case, particularly the different forms so-called malarial poisonings take in different localities. This subject may also be subdivided and complicated by going into the controversy as to whether yellow fever is endemic on the West Coast or not. That it has occurred there from time to time there can be no question. At Fernando Po in 1862 and in 1866 in Senegal, pretty frequently, and at least one epidemic at Bonny was true yellow fever, but in the case of each of these outbreaks it is said to have been imported from South America into Fernando Po by the ships from Havana and into Bonny by a ship which had on her previous run been down the South American ports with a cargo of mules. The litter belonging to this mule cargo was not cleared out of her until she got into Bonny, when it was thrown overside into the river, and then the yellow fever broke out. But, on the other hand, South America taxes West Africa, the Guinea coast, with having first sent out yellow fever in the cargoes of slaves. This certainly is a strange statement, because the African native rarely has malarial fever severely. He has it, and you often are informed so-and-so has got it, yellow fever, but he does not often die of it, merely is truly wretched and sick for a day or so, and then recovers. Regarding the hematuria, there is also controversy. A very experienced and excellent authority doubts whether this is entirely a malarial fever, or whether it is not. In some cases, at any rate, brought on by overdoses of quinine, and Dr. Plen asserts, and his assertions are heavily backed up by his great success in treating this fever, that quinine has a very bad influence when the characteristic symptoms have declared themselves, and that it should not be given. I hesitate to advise this because I fear to induce anyone to abandon quinine, which is the great weapon against malaria, and not from any wanton faith in Dr. Plennan, for he has studied malarial fevers in Cameroon with the greatest energy and devotion, bringing to bear on the subject a sound German mind trained in a German way, and that this, for such subjects, no better thing exists. His brother, also a doctor, was stationed in Cameroon before him, and is now in the German East African possessions, similarly working hard, and when these two shall publish the results of their conjoined investigations, we shall have the most important contribution to our knowledge of malaria that has ever appeared. It is impossible to overrate the importance of such work as this to West Africa, for the man who will make West Africa pay will be the scientific man who gives us something more powerful against malaria than quinine. It is too much to hope that medical men out at work on the coast, doctoring day and night, and not only obliged to doctor, but to nurse their white patients, with the balance of their time taken up by giving bills of health to steamers, wrestling with varied and awful sanitary problems presented by native towns, etc., can have sufficient time or life left in them to carry on a series of experiments and of cultures, but they can and do supply the man in the laboratory at home grand material for him to carry the thing through. Meanwhile, we wait for that man to do the best we can. Meanwhile, we wait for that man and do the best we can.